Good Wednesday evening, friends. I'm Joe Gillaway, and along with my partner, Bill Bostic, we welcome you to This and That, the podcast. Bill, how are you today?
Well, I tell you, it's great to be on Lower Paxton Township's #1 podcast.
Is it still number one?
I think we are. I think we're really flying and making great strides in the podcast space.
It's one of one, but we'll take it, right?
Exactly.
And we want to thank you for hanging in there, viewers, because we did obviously come on a little bit late. And can we just blame that on technical difficulties, Bill? Because it was.
It was definitely
technical difficulties.
And, not to be. We're not going to explain them what the technical difficulties were.
Absolutely not. We have to keep secrets on this podcast, Bill. All right.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway, this is the People's Podcast. Did you know that, Bill?
I did not. I thought we were the official podcast of Lower Paxton Township's supervisors race.
We're that too. We're also that. But the People's Podcast, and what we mean by that is we allow the people to get involved, to interact with us during the show via comments. If you have any guests that you'd like to propose that we bring on, we'd love to hear about it. So anyway, and Bill, do you know what episode this is?
I believe it's 12.
No,
13.
It's 13. Yeah.
13. Okay.
Okay. That's your only bit of homework you have. Okay. Between now and the next show.
I've been very busy, so it's hard to keep track of all this.
It's hard to keep track of what episode it is. So let's very quickly thank our sponsors. There they are. The Robert H. Hoke American Legion Post 272, Rickabaz Electric, Team PA, AAU Basketball, and Be a Hero, Hire a Hero. Thanks to those great local businesses for supporting our show. And then how about our disclaimer, Bill? I don't think you're going to say anything kind of insulting or
not with the guests tonight. I think we have uncontroversial guests tonight.
Okay, so but let's still read the disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants who voice them and do not necessarily reflect the positions held by This and That, the podcast, as an entity, Bill or myself, or the sponsors who support the show. So we're clear, right? We're clear.
We're clear. And why don't you tell the folks who's coming on tonight?
I'm going to do that right now. And how about that?
Look at that.
Hawaiian Chris James. I like that T-shirt. He's got the little piece of plastic that goes in the middle of a 45 RPM record, Bill.
I recognize
that. AKA a 7-inch record.
I remember that from the 1960s.
Okay, good. And then Andrew Linker, who I'm allowed to call Andy now. Okay, I just met him 20 minutes ago, and I'm already allowed to call him Andy, and that's pretty cool.
I tell you what, Joe. When we talk to Andy, I'm gonna do my routine where I when it comes to having decisions or opinions, I'm gonna call balls and strikes tonight.
Okay, like metaphorically, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's good, Bill. Very good. So anyway, Hawaiian Chris James, he's into his 41st year as a radio. I mean, at one time they were probably called DJs more than I would call him a radio host.
Yeah,
host / DJ, DJ / host. I mean, he has a show, and it's more than just spinning music. I don't know, they don't spin anymore, but
no.
So Hawaiian Chris James, this is exciting. And then Andrew Linker is a journalist, and he's written books. He's a sports journalist, but with a heavy flavor or emphasis on baseball. Okay, he's a baseball guy, and I am too. So I'm really looking forward to this whole show. Upcoming on the 17th, we have Susquehanna Township School District Superintendent Tamara Willis. On the 24th, we have Julie Walker and another guest, a kid, an area kid from the Peyton Walker Foundation. And then 7:31, we're going to do our first episode of You Do What? And what You Do What is members of our community that earn a living in really non-traditional, kind of odd, obscure ways. And we're really hoping that we have a local clown / ice cream man joining us. We're sourcing him, and then another couple that do a couple different kind of off the wall ways of paying their bills. So what are you burning on, Bill? Anything going on with you that's interesting or new?
Actually, I mean, I'm being very honest. Things have really started to pick up on Linglestown Gazette because of some of the stuff happening locally. And I'm getting ready to do some fundraising, and there's all kinds of things happening on that side of the world with me, and that's really where my focus has been. So I'm sort of like your assistant, Joe. That's really what I'm becoming.
So you're ramping up to shake people down for money.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you're doing? Okay.
Yeah, the heavy hitters in the township better get ready. Get your checkbooks out.
We got to find the people with the most money and start with them.
Exactly.
We still got this discolored water thing. I mean, this whole township or the whole area is going to just implode with anger.
Well, what about you? Have you gotten it?
I have it. I have discolored water, and I'm just using it as like it's clear.
I just got a call an automated call this afternoon. They started doing it in my area.
Mm-hmm.
Right about now, they're doing it through 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, something like that. So we could get some brown water.
I don't think we need to spend any more time on discolored water.
I told my friend, why don't you just tell people you have chocolate milk on tap? That's what you have.
There you go. But it doesn't taste that good. I was using it today, and I noticed that it was kind of like light brown or yellow, whatever. And I was washing dishes with it, and for a second I thought, that's not cool. But then I thought, it's not really that big of a deal either. So anyway, folks, we're going to get through this together. How about the roundabout? You're going to give us, maybe not tonight, but some updates on this roundabout. People are losing their freaking heads over this because tractor trailers get stuck in the Lingelstown Square roundabout.
Where did you hear this? That was like weeks ago. That was a big issue.
There was another truck that got stuck just a couple days ago.
Okay.
And people were losing it again.
Let's put it this way. The roundabout was one of the first ones in Pennsylvania, and they screwed up. They made it way too small.
Okay.
And it's small because of the nature of our square in Lingelstown. There's just not enough room.
Now, who are they? Who built it? Was that the PennDOT or
PennDOT gets the final say? Yeah. So PennDOT allowed this to go in, and they thought in their infinite wisdom that by putting up little tiny signs on Route 39 and Mountain Road, that would keep that people would actually see them and abide by them. It's crazy.
All right. Well, that's another thing that people are angry about. And then Coons Pool, is that ever going to open?
If I were a betting man, I would not. I would say no.
Okay.
I would say I would put money on the no side.
I think they tried so hard. Or who was our guest? The woman that was our guest. She's a lifeguard and a swim team coach. I think she's an ex-board member. Great, awesome lady. And I think what they did was they did try, obviously, to get it open. But people thought that it was definitely going to open once they said that they were working on it, working towards it, and it probably isn't going to happen now. We don't think so. Anyway,
that's very unofficial. I mean, it's something, a miracle could happen, but they still haven't found the problem where the leak's at. As far as
are there miracles in the pool business, Bill?
Well, we're heading into July. The miracles are going to be hard to find, I think.
Okay, all right. It's not miracle season. All right, that's all I have. Do you have anything else before we bring in Hawaiian Chris James?
If you're curious about some of the happenings last night with the township supervisors,
let's touch on that.
Paxton, just
People
head over.
Need another reason to get pissed off.
Yeah, just go over to Lingelstown Gazette. I did a Facebook Live last night on it. I did a little article, and then my correspondent, Jay Purdy, came in with a whole article about the thing. So there's plenty of coverage over in Lingelstown Gazette on Facebook.
Wait a second, Bill, you have a correspondent?
Yes, I have. I have 3 of them.
You get a correspondent?
I have 3 volunteer correspondents.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I'd have to see them, and are they real?
They are real. I'm not making that up.
Schedule some coffee with these guys. I want to meet them.
Okay.
So I know Jay Purdy's a very bright guy, very bright,
Jay Purdy,
knowledgeable.
Dave Caesar.
Okay, I know Dave very well.
He covers the retail and restaurant scene, and then Bill Minsker. Bill Minsker does the local
retail
happenings.
And restaurant scene. What the
Absolutely.
hell? That's a pretty good crew, though, Bill. Seriously, that's a very good crew. They're great. They're awesome guys, and you have a good team there. Okay, well that's good. I didn't know that. All right, you want to bring in Hawaiian Chris James?
Let's do it.
And we're going to keep Andrew Linker. I think we fed him well. He's got what did we feed him there?
He had M&Ms.
Okay.
M&Ms and colored water.
Mythical M&Ms. There he is, Hawaiian Chris James. How are you, bud?
Good. Let me start by saying I was the technical difficulties. My email was in spam, and I never thought to look in spam for it.
That happens, and it does. It happened to me too. And I'll tell people, I didn't get the email, and then I did, but it was in spam. So thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, I go through that Linglestown roundabout every day, twice a day. Because I don't believe in taking the interstate, so I go straight through there, and I put up with that roundabout every day.
It's not bad if you're in a car, right?
It's a joy.
Yeah, it is a joy. I find I
not at all.
Okay. So listen, are you a DJ or a radio?
Through there too, and I had no problem.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Are you a DJ or a radio host?
You could call me whatever you want, as long as the check clears from Cumulus. I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because, a guy like you, and I have to kind of stroke you right out of the gate, man. You're an entertaining guy, and I would look at you as a radio host. You know what I mean? You're hosting a show. You're keeping me engaged. Yeah, I want to hear some music here and there. I certainly do. But a guy like you, man, I would tune in to listen to you.
Hey, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
I have to be honest. It's when I got into this business, I used to spin something called records. I had to actually spin vinyl when I first started doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And back then we were allowed to speak like a minute to 30 seconds to a minute at a time, or else they would yell at you. But the way that the business has evolved with streaming and all that, you've got everybody can get the music wherever they want. The difference is now in between the records, which is where we come in.
We are losing you. Chris, we're losing you.
We have to move your phone a little bit.
Yeah, your audio is not good right now.
How about now?
No.
He's outside, it looks like.
Hello.
Mm-mm.
How about now?
No. It's still difficult.
All right. Tell me.
Nope.
You can hear me.
Very kind of metallic and muffled.
Hello.
No. I'll tell you what we're going to do, Chris. Why don't we do this? I have an idea. If we don't get this to work in a few seconds here. Well, we don't want you to walk into traffic just to be.
This is a true road show.
The true road show.
How about now?
No. I'm going to tell you what we'll do. Let's bring Andrew Linker in, okay? That way we can have something going on here. And then.
No.
And then you can work on getting back up and running. If you can't get back up and running, how about if we promise you this? We'll try to do it next week. But we want you to get up and running. Just right now, it's not happening. We could follow this into the gates of insanity, Chris. So I'm going to bump you out into the green room. Enjoy the turkey wraps and M&Ms. There we go. And we're going to, there he is.
There are no turkey wraps left. You're gone.
All right.
You're gone.
Well, thanks for joining us, Andrew Linker.
He said to call him Andy, please.
I know. I'm going
to
do that now.
Andrew is usually when I get in trouble. So the
Andrew was for the viewers. I already told the viewers that I'm allowed to call him Andy now.
That's fine.
So let's start. Let me be kind of very conventional and ask you, where were you born and raised? I just want to get an idea. I like writers. I'm really interested in writers, and I want to see where you came from, how you developed a knack for writing.
Well, I was born and raised in Philadelphia, which you should probably be able to know from the accent and the fractured syntax.
I do. I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I can tell.
So I was born and bred in Philadelphia, and my mother was from Boston, and I had no chance as a kid with any accent.
Okay.
I was half Bostonian and half Philadelphia.
And what kind of education did you have?
Well, I had a good education. I just didn't adhere to it very well.
Right.
I went to Philadelphia public schools for the first through fifth grade, then moved out to the Lower Merion School District. They got tired of me after the 12th grade, so they sent me on my merry way, and I went to Penn State for 4 years.
And what'd you major in?
I majored in journalism, which was probably a mistake. I should have minored in journalism and majored the way sports turned out. I should have majored in business.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But they have an excellent journalism program at Penn State. I kind of helped bring down that collective GPA, but I did learn a lot there. And that was a long time ago, but I still remember all the key points, I hope.
Did you write sports for the Daily Collegian?
I did a little bit of sports, did a little soccer, a little basketball, and then I spent a lot of time as an editor for a variety of different sections.
Okay.
Now,
all right.
I don't know if your viewers, listeners, podcasters know much about the Daily Collegian, but then as it is now, and even before me, it's one of the top college papers in the country. In fact, it was bigger circulation-wise than my first job outside of college. Back then, I had a daily circulation of 20,000, which was pretty darn good for a college paper. But I learned a lot there, and Penn State too. After 4 years, decided that I should move on to life's work, so they pushed me out of the door, and I went to work in Bloomsburg, then Wilkes-Barre, then down in Harrisburg, and I could never get off the Susquehanna River. So here I am right now. Oh, and by the way, we have well water here, so I feel sorry for your badly for your colored water, but I got well water, and I keep Culligan in business with water filters.
Of those, you could use colored or discolored, and it would mean the same thing.
What
is that called? What is that called? There's a term for that. Yeah,
it's called Flint, Michigan.
Okay, but colored and discolored, they're opposites, but they mean exactly the same thing in this case. Okay,
they do. In that case, it means bottled water.
Right. Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this: did you always write? Did you enjoy writing when you were younger than like when you were a kid? Because I did. I like to sit in I used to act like I was a writer because I like to write, and I would write stuff to nobody, or I wasn't submitting it anywhere. I just wanted to write. You know what I mean? So did you?
Yeah, there were a few thousand stories I wrote over the years. I thought I was writing to nobody, and I wasn't sure. But around 12 years old, 13 years old, I got an epiphany that I was not going to be the incarnation of Mickey Mantle or Willie Mays.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I knew sports, so I wanted to stay in sports. I had a great high school English teacher who kind of steered me toward writing and kind of pushed me toward my first internship when I was 17. So to this day, I don't know whether to thank her or curse her out for this, but but yeah, I started when I was 17 in newspapers, and I stayed there until I was 48.
Okay. Let's start with this. I mean, I wanted to ask you about like kind of old school baseball or older school, I think, than maybe Bill does. But
well, Bill's only 28.
That's true. Yeah. He only knows the newer stuff. Greatest old stadiums, ex stadiums. Well, I guess you could include Boston and Wrigley, but what are the stadiums for your dime that you would enjoy the most, or you think kind of offered the most, I guess?
Well, personally, for me, it was Connie Mack Stadium in Philadelphia because that's where I saw my first games as a kid. But, people rave about Boston, and they should. They rave about Wrigley Field, and they should. And if you've ever watched games there, they're two of the most uncomfortable places to watch games.
So
because
bad.
Those seats are 100 years old by and large. And of course, they're in the same width-wise. And because to take them out and replace them, they'd have to go by the ADA specifications. So if you go to Boston, be prepared to be just curled up and in your seat for 3 hours because you're not moving out of it.
I've never been there. I've been to Wrigley twice, and the first time I took an ex-girlfriend of mine. This was a long time ago, and I was so excited. I was on cloud nine, and just kind of wouldn't shut up on the plane ride out. You're gonna love this place, and and we get there. She's like, I don't get it. she said, I'm uncomfortable. It's hot. The food's not that good. I said, but look at the ivy on the walls. She goes,
you're in Wrigley Field, and
right.
That's a must place, and obviously Fenway is a must place. And if you ever get out to Los Angeles, Dodger Stadium, which is now, believe it or not, the third oldest stadium in Major League Baseball.
Wow.
Yeah. Also,
I was there. I went there.
Holds the most fans too.
Do they hold the most fans?
I'm pretty sure it's 50,000. Which isn't a lot. There used to be, stadiums with a lot.
Well, the cookie cutters, the Veteran Stadium, Three Rivers, Riverfront, they held 60,000 plus because they were also designed for football.
Right.
So, I mean, those multi-purpose stadiums, they weren't good for either sport. The line sites were terrible for football, and they were even worse for baseball. The old stadiums, those cookie cutters, and not to get too much into the weeds, but the seats were all kind of pointed at the 50-yard line. Where in baseball, the seats proper seating in baseball, everything's angled towards second base.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of the middle of the field.
Right. But I think they did a good job with the newer ballparks and making them that retro feeling. It all started with Camden Yards in '92 when that opened, and then, of course, everything was just taking off because of Camden Yards, and now everybody wanted to have a ballpark that looked like it was built in the 1920s, but had all the amenities of the 2020s.
Are there any that are decidedly better than any others than the rest of them? The newer parks?
Wow. Well, I'd say if you want to go for views, PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You can't beat it with the view of downtown Pittsburgh. I have not yet been to San Francisco. It's on my bucket list, but just seeing pictures, it looks like a terrific place. I know I have friends who have been there and they rave about it, but having been to Pittsburgh, it's hard to beat that. Baltimore's still a great feel after 30 plus years.
Yeah.
It's hard to really say any of the new ballparks are bad because they build them so well and with so many amenities and in so many ways nods to the ballparks of that city in the past.
Right.
So,
right.
It's hard to put a favorite, but can't go wrong with Camden Yards. Can't go wrong with PNC in Pittsburgh. If they had a better team, they'd fill that place every night.
Absolutely.
Bill,
do you have any questions before we get down to brass tacks here? I have something I want to address with Mr. Linker, and that nobody could probably talk about as well as him. Very, very few people.
Well, I left some M&Ms for Chris in the green room.
Good.
There are like 3 of them for him.
Good.
But Andy, I wanted to ask you if you could give us some insight as to why baseball has become such a big part of your life, especially for those folks watching after the live, on an archived, who don't really relate to the game. What is it that makes it such a great game for you?
Well, I grew up with it in Philadelphia.
Okay.
In Philadelphia, when I was a kid in the 60s and 70s, everybody played everything. But the unique thing about baseball then and before then and now and 20 years from now, you don't need to be 6'8" to play it. You don't need to weigh 250 pounds to play it. Okay. You can be really any size if you're Freddie Patek at 5'5" for the Pirates in the 70s and the Royals into the 80s, or you can be 6'11" Randy Johnson. So as long as it's a skill sport first that requires athleticism to perform those skills, and the athleticism is what separates everybody. Made me a wonderful bench player in college because I lacked the athleticism. But it's a sport that anybody could play, and as a kid, I could play it better than any other sport that I could play.
Do you like how?
I'm sorry.
Do you like the molasses aspect, which I love? Like people go, I can't just sit there. I'm so slow, and I don't think they have trained themselves to, let's say, watch it properly. You know what I mean? I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, you have to understand that it's not going to be like a tennis match, or it's not going to be like most other sports.
No. And if you watch baseball and watch baseball closely, and again, we're going to get into the weeds here, there is so much going on that most fans never see.
Right.
You're watching where infielders are shading. You're watching how outfielders are subtly moving in or moving out depending on the situation, or infielders moving up depending on the count. Watch middle infielders. Middle infielders can see the catcher's signs, so they get an idea just by watching them what might be the pitch coming.
Watch the assistant coaches in the dugout moving the outfielders back and forth.
Yeah,
just stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you have to
tell you, my coaches mostly had their hands on their. They left us to our own devices.
They figured, what's it matter where we put them, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Andy, did you ever hit at any level of baseball? Did you ever hit a home run? What are you laughing about?
Because that's probably the funniest question I ever got in my life.
All right.
It'd be more appropriate to ever hit the ball out of the infield. That I can answer yes. Hit a home run? No.
I never did either. I got one to the warning track in Little League. That's about as far as it went.
I joined your club. I could field the ball.
Yeah.
I can still throw a ball. And 60 plus years later, I still have trouble hitting the ball. But can I hit a ball? Yeah. Am I going to hit one over the fence? No. I've never had any. That's a great question.
Okay. So I'm a fan of Bob Costas. Okay. I love Bob Costas loves baseball, and absolutely. I like to hear him talk about baseball.
Yeah.
And he was on I don't know. I don't think you have to call everything a podcast these days, but he was on an interview, I guess.
Okay.
I think it was somebody's podcast recently, and they asked him about pitching.
Yeah.
The average person is just slaying these pitchers. They're wimps. They're soft. They only go 5 innings, and because they don't understand that it is a different game. And Costas really had a way of kind of laying it out and going, everybody take a deep breath here. The first thing he said was that they didn't throw as hard as they do now. Okay, sure. For that era, they were throwing hard. They were throwing their version of very hard.
Yes.
Nobody threw a ball 100 miles an hour. Nolan Ryan threw one 100.9, and it got him into the Guinness book. Okay, so the point is that it wasn't happening regularly. Now it's happening, not all the time, but they're throwing a lot faster. Okay,
absolutely.
But then the other thing he said, he's like, what you have to understand is the pitchers weren't pitching against all of the world's best players. There were no black players. There were no Asian players. There were very, very few Latino players. You had the world's best white players.
Yes.
So in terms of who they were facing, hitters, I should say, they weren't facing all the best hitters. And Costas just kind of laid it out, where he was kind of delicate not to hurt anybody's feelings. But what do you think, Andy, as far as the pitching today versus the pitching of other eras?
It's hard to compare because, as you noted, I mean, what's fast in 2025, it's a whole different type of fast in 1925. Different version, different athletes. Again, you're not facing, because of the game segregation, as a hitter, you're not facing the best pitchers, all of them, and as a pitcher, you're not facing all the best batters.
Yeah.
But in terms of physicality, players today are much better physically because they can devote 12 months a year to training.
Bigger, faster, stronger, quicker.
Bigger, faster, stronger, quicker, and they don't have to spend the off season, in the meat packing plant.
Selling used cars.
Or selling suits in New York City like Yogi Berra and Phil Rizzuto.
The best in the game were selling suits in the off season.
Right. Or going back, if you're Mickey Mantle, going back and working not in the mines then, but near the mines his first couple of years.
Right. Yeah. And that's something.
So it's different from that point of view. And if you look at players now, bigger, stronger, faster. I'll give you an example. We'll mention Mickey Mantle. I'm going to give you some names here. Tell me what they all have in common.
Okay.
They are going to have a few, but Mickey Mantle, Ernie Banks, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays.
5-tool.
Well, not just that.
But they are all 5-tool, right?
They are. Great home run hitters, right?
Yeah.
None of them was 6 feet tall. They were all 5'11" and shorter.
Henry Aaron was about 175, 180
Yep.
weight wise
Yep.
in his kind of prime or in his
Earlier
earlier in his career. He got
was
a little,
probably closer to 200 at the end
yeah,
because he
right.
was just thicker.
Yeah,
But today, you see all these guys, they all throw 95, it seems,
right.
or better. Do they burn out their arms? Yeah, you can make the argument for that. Do you see a lot of them in games? Yes, because a good hitter eventually will catch up to a 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
Mhm.
But if you're a
Absolutely.
hitter and you see a starting pitcher twice, now all of a sudden the third, fourth, and maybe a fifth time you come up in a game, you're seeing three different relievers
That's another point that I forgot to
throw the ball just as hard,
right.
but from different arm angles. They have different spots they like to throw to. So hitters today have it pretty tough,
Yeah.
But what you see today, and people also forget, and Costas is right, people need to take a deep breath. How can that guy go 0 for 4? Or how could this pitcher give up this hit in this situation?
Right.
You have 30 teams in baseball, and each team has the math used to be real easy when it was 25-man rosters, but now they decided to go 26 and 27-man rosters on occasions with double headers. But everybody on this roster, these are the very best players in the world.
Correct.
And even if you go down to AAA, AA in Harrisburg, for example, with the Senators, you could be the worst player on the Harrisburg Senators, comparatively speaking, and you're going to be better than 96%, 95% of the people in the world who are playing the game. People forget how hard it is to be a professional baseball player, to get to AA, and then to succeed in AA, get to AAA, and then get to the major leagues and stay there.
Right.
It is an incredibly hard thing to do, and these people, as a writer covering the Senators for it seemed like about 94 years. It wasn't that long. It just seemed that way.
Right.
Sometimes.
Just shy of 94 years.
Just shy of 94. I almost made it, but my walker broke and I couldn't make it. But I'm going to be in a walker one day, I'm sure. So I really shouldn't say
That's
that.
all right. You can still do podcasts. Nobody would know.
Yeah.
Just like FDR.
Well, yes. I'm just trying to think of the name of his dog. Falfa, maybe? I don't know. But you did it, Joe. You did say in your email, we just want to talk about baseball, not necessarily FDR or his
right.
dog.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of that damn dog's name. Fowler, maybe? Somebody help me. Google, right after the game. Google's our friend.
Right
but
now.
Whenever I covered these guys, as long as they put forth an effort, they're trying. And it's really hard in AA to do well. So just imagine as you keep going up, how hard it is. So the only time I ever got on players is if they didn't put the effort in.
Right.
Effort's not hard. Anybody can put an effort.
We're going to give you a point for that. It's Fala. F-A-L-A. You were close enough. You were close enough. You win.
Wife's name was Eleanor.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you're right about that.
Cousin's name was Theodore.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt's cousin.
Okay, let me close out this subtopic this topic we have going on here. Just to give people an idea that the pitching really isn't all that bad. This is a baseball reference. These are baseball reference numbers, which we can trust that.
Yes.
The average MLB batting average in 1995 was 267. In 2005, 264. In 2015, 254. This year to this point, 245. How bad can the pitching be if it's decreasing like that?
The pitch. It's not that the pitching is bad. It's not.
No, I'm being a little sarcastic there. I think it has to be getting better.
I'm good with sarcasm.
Okay, all right.
I'm good with sarcasm.
All right.
Bill, you can jump in anytime, by the way. It's your show.
I have some questions. I have some questions for you.
I got to answer this one first, though. Okay?
Yeah, that's fine. We're just wrapping this up, Bill.
Joe's going to send me nasty grams. You have so many pitchers today are just throwing. They're bigger, they're stronger, they throw harder. Okay, that's one reason. Another reason why batting averages are down is that there's less emphasis on getting on base, on working on your batting average. Everybody's more interested in launch angle and exit velocity, and that leads. If you go along with the strikeouts, take a look at how strikeouts by batters are up on the same pace. Nowadays, it used to be if you struck out 100 times, that was a badge of shame.
Schmidt
Now,
struck out 180 one year.
oh, there are guys now striking out 200 times a year.
I
I'm
know.
I want to throw this out there to you. Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, Vladimir Guerrero. None of those three ever struck out 100 times in a season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-mm-mm.
Two of the greatest home run hitters and one of the greatest free swinging hitters in Guerrero
Man,
ever.
Vlad, he was like a windmill, man. That bat started up here and down.
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's part of it too. People get caught up in launch angle,
Right.
and uppercutting everything, and that leads to more strikeouts.
Right.
So it goes hand in hand. There's never just one thing that you can tie your hands on in baseball, saying, that's the reason why this is happening. It's usually it's like layers on an onion. There are 4, 5, 6, 7 reasons why something happens. Everything's a contributor.
Correct. Bill?
Yeah, one of my fascinations over the last 12 months has been following the saga of one Trevor Bauer. Have you tapped into his YouTube channel at all, Andy?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm not, but I will now. I'll take a look at it. Trevor Bauer is, I don't know. He's radioactive in the major leagues.
Yeah, but see, I watched him on YouTube last year compete in the Mexico League, and folks, we're talking about a pitcher that was a Cy Young winner, got bounced from baseball because of alleged sexual happenings with women that never really panned out. But he can't get back in the Major League Baseball. But last year, when he builds into his contracts, Andy, he has to have his photographer and his staff with him so they can document all that's going on. Banter on the bench, what's happening in the training room, in the weight room, all this stuff is documented on his podcast. And he's very scientific about his baseball and his pitching. And he had a great season last year. He was the best pitcher in the Mexico League. He got along famously with the coaches and his teammates, did a lot of coaching himself. Just a standout guy, watching him on this thing. But the MLB has no place for him. It just boggles my mind.
In Bauer's case, and now he's pitching in Japan this year and struggling.
Yeah. Right.
Now those levels, Japan's a level lower than the major leagues.
Yeah.
The Mexican league's a good couple levels lower. Okay. Right. So for Bauer to dominate in Mexico would not equate to the major leagues.
Okay.
Trevor Bauer had, and I don't know Trevor Bauer. I never met him. I only know him by reputation. He did not have a great reputation before these allegations happened.
Right. Okay.
He bounced around with a lot of different teams before he got to the Dodgers and the troubles that he had there.
Right. It seems like he's matured. That's what I'm trying to get across. That's my opinion.
I hope so, because he was kind of bottomed out there from the maturity pool. He was kind of at the bottom. So
he's polarizing.
Does he ever get back?
What's that?
I'm sorry.
He's polarizing. I mean, and
yes,
and an organization, an owner that has a multi-billion-dollar investment, they get to decide if they want to bring somebody who's polarizing into their stadium for their fans to consume. And that's really what it comes down to, I think.
That's exactly right. It's do you want to introduce this into your clubhouse where now all of a sudden where you have 26 players, you're going to have 25 players and one guy, and the cameras are always going to be in clubhouse surrounding Trevor Bauer. And then when they talk to his teammates, they're not talking to his teammates about what they're doing on the field, but, hey, what did you think about what Trevor said? Or what do you think about what Trevor did? And it's a distraction that teams don't want. I mean, does he have talent? Yeah, obviously, but sometimes it's not worth the headache.
My hope for him is, unfortunately, like you said, he's not doing well in Japan. But I thought sometime last year where he really seemed to be doing well. If this team late in the season needed pitching, to bring him in, because he was going to basically play for the base MLB minimum.
Sure.
Bring him in for the home stretch there in the season.
Right, and to Joe's point, though. teams are always looking for pitching.
Yeah.
But now with baseball, they're looking to avoid headaches.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it's the same thing. Why people gave up on Tim Tebow in the NFL. Tim Tebow was a number 3 quarterback, but if you bring Tim Tebow into your camp or on your team, now all of a sudden he's bigger than everybody in the locker room. Well, you gotta keep control of your locker room. You're trying to build chemistry. Chemistry goes into winning. If you're
That's
bringing
a great comparison.
if you're bringing in a disruptor, that's going to mess up that chemistry.
Right. Yeah.
And there are other players in other sports over the years that have.
Kaepernick, of course.
Well, Kaepernick is one. Ron Artest in basketball was another. Gilbert Arenas was one, probably more so than Artest. So yeah, I think in today's you have billion-dollar industries, and the last thing you want to do is have fans picketing in front of your business.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the guy's not Lou Gehrig, he's a pitcher. He's not Cy Young, so it's not like he's going to come in and kind of win you a World Series on his own.
Yeah.
Cy's really old now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about Trevor. Here's the thing about Trevor Bauer. Guys, don't worry about him. He had made a ton of money before he got booted, and he's now making money through other revenue sources with training pitchers, and he's making money off his YouTube channel. He has a business. I think it's in Arizona, a training site. Don't worry about him. He's doing fine, just fine.
Well, I gather you're into this Bauer guy, aren't you?
Well, again, here it is. I should cross my chest should be renegade. I mean, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
I like renegades.
You're hardcore, Bill. So let's move on to this. Do these does Pete Rose belong in the Hall of Fame? Let's start with that. And then we're gonna talk about the steroid guys that aren't in. But, what do you think, Andy?
He broke the one cardinal rule in baseball that you can't break, and he flaunted that rule.
He flaunted it. Yeah.
Here's what people miss on Pete Rose. Pete Rose is all over the Hall of Fame. We were up there just last year, some friends of mine, and Pete Rose, there are more than 15 Rose-related artifacts displayed in the Hall of Fame. And with the exception of Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, there's no one in the Hall of Fame, a Hall of Famer, that has more artifacts on display than the guy who isn't in the Hall of Fame, Pete Rose. Right. The only thing Rose is missing in the Hall of Fame is he's not in the plaque room.
Right.
If you want to go to Cooperstown and find out about Pete Rose, he's all over the place. In fact, they even have a kiosk there that asks visitors, should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame or not?
Huh.
So you know what?
You don't have to give me you're giving us enough information that you don't have to if you don't want to go one way or the other.
No, my inclination is no because of what he did.
That's my inclination.
And you really open up that Pandora's box full of baseballs. If you have Pete Rose, then you certainly have to have Joe Jackson in. And Joe Jackson admitted taking money.
Right.
Then you have to take a good look at Eddie Seacott, who was one of the key members of the 1919 Black Sox, a pitcher. He took money. Seacott had a really, really good career. If you look at his numbers, maybe borderline. He had a career similar to Curt Schilling.
Right.
So Rose is, and now I'm not, just because Rose was reinstated or his permanent ban. It was never a lifetime ban. That's another thing that fans misconstrue. It was never a lifetime ban. Well, he's dead now, so he's eligible. No, it was a permanent ban, and it was a permanent ban that Pete Rose agreed to.
That's correct.
Why did he agree to this? Baseball had no motivation in 1989 to ban Pete Rose. He was a good ambassador for the game. He was very popular. The Titanic had no intentions of hitting the iceberg too, and they thought they missed it, but 90% of an iceberg is below the water.
Right.
The point I'm making here, as I'm mixing my metaphors, is what did baseball know about Pete Rose that they've never released?
Right. Well,
So
one of the things. Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. finish your thought.
No. I do it all the time. I spent a whole career interrupting people. Don't worry about it.
Well, let me say this. One of the things that we do know is that he had, let's call it, sexual relations with,
Yes.
which was what was probably an underage girl.
Yeah.
She said she was 14 or 15 at the time, and he said no, she was 16. Okay.
Right.
So he admitted to having sex with a girl that he thought was 16 while he was married and had children at home.
Yes.
And a reason I'm saying this, and I'm not saying this to blast people, he was my favorite player. I slid head first every time, even when I shouldn't have, because I liked Pete Rose. So
look at my face. I slid head
right,
first.
yeah, you had to be a Pete Rose fan. But there's a, I don't want to call it an ethics clause, but you know what it's called.
Yeah.
A morals
clause.
A morals clause.
Yeah.
In the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame.
There's a character clause.
A character clause,
when you vote for a player, part of it is his character.
So you would have to, and there's a man who kind of went out and found girls for him on the road, and that guy it's documented, and so there's some things there too. I mean, and you would probably have to take a look at that if you really were getting serious, Andy, in my opinion, about considering to vote him in.
Now the thing is, when his ban was lifted, along with everybody else on the permanently ineligible list, which would include Joe Jackson, you don't automatically go into the Hall of Fame. People are popping, their baseball bottles of champagne, and now he's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Correct. He
still has to go in front of the Veterans Committee, which is 16 people. Still has to get 12 of those 16 people to vote for him. And those people are comprised of executives, of historians, of players who are in the Hall of Fame now. So there's no guarantee he would ever get 12 votes or even close to it.
Right.
You look at guys that Tommy John, for example, in the latest Veterans Committee that elected the late Dick Allen and now, unfortunately, the late Dave Parker, they each received the minimum of 12 of the 16 votes. Tommy John, who won 288 games in his career, and you can make a real great case for Tommy John in the Hall of Fame, he received 6 votes.
Unbelievable.
At 16.
Yeah, they have this kind of 300 number for wins, and there's so many pitchers, and I'm not even making a case for or against them. I'm just saying, if you don't get to 300, you better have done some other stuff, right?
Well, that's true. And, I could tell you a great story about Don Sutton when he would count down to 300. He was with the Astros, and he'd win a game, and he would say to Nolan Ryan, "Hey, I'm only 22 away." And Ryan would be, "What are you talking about? I'm 22 away from 300. If I get 300, they're going to put me in the Hall of Fame."
Right.
Which is probably Sutton's only chance. Sutton never led the league in anything as a pitcher. But, 300 was a magical number, and Sutton should be there. Tommy John should be in there.
Wasn't it amazing that Tommy John ended up getting Tommy John surgery?
Well, he started Tommy John surgery.
I know. And Bill, tell this guy not to take me seriously, would you?
No, I can tell you. I can ask you right now, who was who won the most games in history and never won the Cy Young Award?
Nolan Ryan.
No, he won the Cy Young. No, Cy Young never won the Cy Young.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I was going to say that first, but I was thinking, how do you win 511 games and never?
That's my sarcasm there.
Right.
Where were we? With Pete Rose, with Tommy John. John, let me just finish on Tommy John.
Yeah.
Tommy John actually won more games after the surgery than before. Mm-hmm. The success of Tommy John's surgery has saved so many careers. And in fact, there are 2 Hall of Famers who had Tommy John surgery. One was John Smoltz, and the other, ironically, was Paul Molitor. But so they both weren't pitchers, obviously.
And Smoltz threw really well late in his career after he went into the
Smoltz, after Tommy John basically became the relief pitcher he was.
Right.
And had he been like Eckersley, had he been a relief pitcher his whole career, he would have got it that way.
Right.
But Tommy John, I think, should be in just for his impact on the game.
I do too.
The Hall of Fame. What did he do? His impact on the game is, and as far as we know, he never broke any.
Plus, his teams won, Andy. His teams won.
That's a big thing.
Yeah,
that's a huge thing. If you put Rocky Colavito on the Yankees instead of Cleveland, he'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah.
There are a lot of guys like that. They're just in the wrong place.
So let's finish out this topic with
Sure.
what about the steroid guys? Do they belong in? We don't need to spend too much time on it. I just kind of feel.
We can do this in under 3 hours, Joe.
I know. I mean, I just look at some of the guys like Clemens and Bonds. I'm just going to start with those two. I just kind of feel like those guys were Hall of Fame caliber players without the steroids, even though we didn't have a chance to see them without the steroids.
No, that's not true. I disagree with that, Joe.
Earlier in their careers, right?
Yeah, and the thing with Bonds, and I think Bonds you can make a real great argument for, the line of demarcation with Bonds was 1999.
Yeah, I stand corrected. You're right. You're right about that. Yeah.
So prior to that, from 86, 87 through 99, through 98, he's a multiple MVP.
God, was he good?
He was the best player in baseball.
Yes, he was.
And there's no doubt he was the best player. Now, did he become the Michelin man who could hit fastballs 500 feet after that? Yeah, and that's unfortunate. People hold that against him for this.
Right.
But I kind of look at it, was he a Hall of Famer before this nonsense? I got to say yes. And I think Clemens was probably in that argument too. Clemens was Jim Bunning, Don Drysdale, Catfish Hunter, that kind of Hall of Famer.
Right.
You know, before he allegedly did stuff when he got to Toronto. I'm saying allegedly because I hate to get sued. You guys already had your disclaimer at the beginning.
We did. We did.
I want to have mine now. But Clemens, you can make an argument for too. But then you get into guys, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They're taking steroids to help stay healthy and be on the field. It's kind of giving you an advantage that you shouldn't be having.
Right. Yeah.
And, you know,
because other people weren't doing that.
Right. We can point to those guys, Sosa, McGuire, certainly Rafael
Palmeiro. Yeah.
You know, the thing with McGuire is the stuff that he was doing at the time, the creatine, that was actually legal. He wasn't tested for the other things, but it's the whole smoke fire thing, and that's unfortunate. It's such a muddy issue. I'll tell you what, the Baseball Hall of Fame up there, they have a great exhibit on steroids in the game and the impact it's had, and they talk about McGuire and Sosa and Palmeiro. They don't hide from it. I think the voters have pretty much spoken. You know, McGuire and Bonds and Clemens have gone past their 10 years of being on the ballot. Right. So now their fate will rest with the Veterans Committee, much like Pete Rose situation will. I think Bonds and Clemens will eventually come out of that okay. I don't think the others will.
They would be the first two for me.
I think so. And it's a real slippery slope, though, and I probably gave you – you asked me what time it was, and I'm telling you how to build a watch.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I'm showing up the landscape. I'm keeping Chris in the green room. I'm letting him eat those last.
Chris is gone.
Chris is left.
He's down the road. We're gonna reschedule Chris. I'll do one more question here, Bill, and then get your next question ready.
All right. I have it.
Let's talk about new rules or newer rules.
Okay.
I know you're a purist. In the real true sense, not just to attach that to your name because you love baseball so much. But I gather you're a purist. A DH in both leagues?
I'm not a fan. I've never been a fan of the DH. I grew up in a National League city. I love double switches. I love double switches in college because
make the manager earn their paycheck, right?
Well, it was the best way for the manager to get me in a game. But it's. I've never been a fan of the DH. I understand why they do it. People don't like to watch pitchers hit. I like to watch pitchers, going back old school, pitchers that actually devoted time to hitting. They kept themselves in games longer because of their ability to swing the bat.
Right.
Ferguson Jenkins, Bob Gibson, Don Drysdale.
All of the Phillies back like in the early to late 70s. They had a whole Rick Wise.
Yeah.
Steve Carlson.
Yeah, Rick Wise. Yeah,
I think Jim Lonborg. Yeah, there were good Phillies pitchers back then in the 70s.
Yeah, Wise was an outstanding hitter.
He had two home runs, and he had a no hitter. What did he do? He did something else.
No hitter, 1971.
Maybe 2 home runs, right?
The greatest performance by a pitcher. He no hits the Reds.
It had to be.
He allows 1 walk. He hits 2 home runs in the same game. How do you beat that?
You don't beat that.
And then, of course, after the season, they trade him, which would create a huge uproar in Philadelphia. They traded him to St. Louis for Steve Carlton, who was a malcontent.
Wow. Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, and ironically, Carlton wanted $5,000 more in his contract, and St. Louis said, "We're not giving it to you."
How about that?
Wise wanted $5,000 more in his contract. The Phillies said, "We're not giving it to you." They traded them for each other, and they
get rid of these malcontents, right?
Yeah, and they both got raises on top of it. And poor Rick Wise spends the rest of his career and the rest of his days saying, he's the guy that got traded for Steve Carlton. Rick Wise had an outstanding career.
Yes, he did.
188 games.
Yes, he did.
Little factoid for you. You can win a bar bet with this.
Okay.
The great Game 6 of the 1975 World Series, in which Carlton Fisk hits the home run in extra innings to win a game. Come on, you can look it up on YouTube. Rick Wise was the winning pitcher in that game.
That I know.
You knew that.
This game.
That game. Well, it was like this.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move through. Let's kind of do like a speed round here.
Okay.
With the remainder of these newer rules.
Okay.
Instant replay.
I like it when it's used properly. I sometimes it takes inexplicably long to do it.
Right.
I don't know why. I think if you have the technology, you should use it. I like in baseball how they limit it. In football, for example, football takes forever.
Yeah.
Basketball is even worse. Baseball, they're getting quicker at it. I think it's important. Let me try this again. It's a good thing I write for a living because I couldn't talk for a living. In the minor leagues in AAA, for example, and they did this in spring training this year, a batter or pitcher or catcher could ask for an instant review of a pitch that was either in the strike zone or out of the strike zone. And it was almost instantaneously with the umpires. Umpire had a headset on, somebody else is watching it, and they're telling him in his ear, you had to call right, it's a ball, you had to call wrong, it's a strike, whatever the case is. It takes only a couple of seconds. That's going to be the next rule I think you see in baseball. And you can only do it, selectively. It's not like every pitch. But I think that'll be the next rule change. There's some things with instant replay that they can expand, that they haven't expanded. They have over the years. They still need to kind of just make it all encompassing.
Okay.
For a speed round, that was a long. How
about the shift or the inability to shift for like the pool hitters? Of course, you have to have two infielders on each side of second base, and they have to be in the infield, right?
They have to be in the infield. They have to be in the dirt.
Yeah, in the dirt. Yeah.
I actually like that rule. A lot of people don't like that rule. I think it looks kind of silly to have, in some cases, four infielders on the first base side of second base. That looks kind of silly. I'm okay too if they decide to keep the shift. And you know what? If you just want to keep as a batter laying down bunts and getting free hits, do it, because then you have runners on base.
But you don't see much of that, though. You didn't see much of that. Everybody always said, "Why don't they just lay down a bunt?"
Well,
because they weren't doing it.
No, because everybody's got to go home and see their launch angle, how far they hit a ball, and exit velocity, and a bunt just isn't as dramatic as that.
Okay, so pitch clock. We have two more, Bill, and then we're going to turn it over to you. Pitch clock.
I love the pitch clock.
Yeah,
okay,
I do too.
I think the pitch clock's a great idea. They tweaked it over the years. I think they have it just about right.
Yeah.
It does speed up the game. I mean, there is great evidence that games are 20, 25 minutes shorter. The thing about the pitch clock is it doesn't take away from the game. You still need to get 27 outs to win.
Yeah.
It's unlike any other sport. You can't keep icing the puck. You can't keep passing the ball and fouling people in basketball. You can't run out the clock and take a knee like you can in football. You still need to get 27 outs. They're just making you do it a little bit quicker. And I think that helps keep people in the game. Doesn't do much for beer sales, but, it helps. I think it helps with the fans. I think it's been well received. I think it's worked out very well.
Okay. One that kind of makes me wince a little bit. Runner placed on second starting in the 10th inning. Bill, did you know about that rule?
Yeah, I do.
Bill?
I do know that. I've seen. Yes, I do.
I call it the zombie runner.
I don't like it.
The zombie runner, to me, because to be placed on the second base in extra innings, you have to make the out the previous inning. So as a zombie, you've risen from the dead to get back into the game.
That's good.
I can't. I hate it more than the DH.
It's like a playground
Wow.
rule. Hey, let's let little Billy start on second here.
It's a Sunday rec rule.
Right.
Rule. It's a rec league rule where it's like the next teams have this field in an hour. We got to get off this.
Right.
Field.
Exactly. Yeah.
The problem I have with it is baseball so disingenuous when it says we're trying to save on pitchers. Well, that's a bunch of malarkey, in my opinion, especially in the minor leagues, where they started this thing and it worked in the minor leagues. So we're going to do it in the major leagues. The minor leagues are a great guinea pig for this stuff. In the minor leagues and in the major leagues, you might have 10 relief pitchers in the bullpen. Major leagues, you have at least 9,
right,
8 or 9 guys in the bullpen. They're not going to break if they pitch more than 1 inning as a relief pitcher.
Right. I was at a game in Baltimore 15, 18 years ago, and we finally left. It was the 13th inning. It was a weeknight. We all had to go to work in the morning. We got home. I turned on the TV, and the game was still going on. It was like in the 17th inning. Yeah.
This is before the zombie runner.
This is before, obviously.
There were games. I remember one night. This is 40 plus years ago, and it's the Mets and the Braves. I came home from work. I'm watching the game. It's like in the 9th inning. I fell asleep. I woke up at like 2:30, 3 o'clock. It's in the 19th inning. It's still the same game. I thought TBS was rerunning it again.
Yeah. I know what happened with me. I turned on the TV and I thought this has got to be a replay. No, we left Camden Yards. It was the 13th inning. I got home. It was in the 17th inning because it only takes an hour and 10 minutes to get home.
Yeah. Look, you should be able to win the game somehow. If it goes long, if you got to use up your pitchers, then you use up your pitchers.
Right.
Especially in the minor leagues. These guys should be able to go more than 15 pitches.
Correct. Yep.
In the minors. So I really dislike the zombie rule. I think it's
I figured you would.
Thank you.
I saved the worst for last. Bill Bostic, step in, buddy.
Okay.
Bill, I never hit a home run. Stratomatic, baby. Stratomatic.
This is one you might be able to help clear up my memory. When I was growing up, I grew up in Dillsburg, which is not that far away from Baltimore. So my dad would take us down to the old Memorial Stadium, and it was during that era when Earl Weaver was the manager, had the Frank and Brooks and Boog and all those guys, great teams.
Mark Belanger, Al Bunbury,
Paul Blair, Don Buford, all those guys. Yeah. So, and all right, the weirdest catcher I ever saw, Elrod Hendricks. He was so angular behind the plate. He looked weird.
Yep.
But there was a game, I think I was there. The Orioles had a no-hitter with like 3 pitchers. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specifically, but now it's more common to have multiple pitchers combined for a no-hitter. Back then, it was less common. Can I tell you a quick Earl Weaver story?
Sure. Certainly. Yes, absolutely.
Earl Weaver in his uniform had a pocket stitched inside his uniform so he could grab his cigarettes.
Okay.
He kept a pack of cigarettes in there. Although we probably can't mention that. It's a family show, right?
No, you're fine.
Show, but yeah.
I'm okay with that? Okay.
Yeah.
So no, I don't remember the specific game, but back then it would have been less common for combined no-hitters, not unheard of.
Right.
But now it's pretty routine if you have a no-hitter.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I just want to end. I want to end with a renegade question. One more renegade question, and that is, I want to hear your take on banana baseball. Andy.
We talked about that before a little bit before.
Before the show, yeah.
Well, when we were trying to find Chris James.
Yeah.
It's Harlem Globetrotters for baseball.
Right.
It's fun. If you want to take it seriously, and I'm like Joe, I'm kind of old school that way, even though Joe and I are just in our 30s. If you take it for what it is, it's funny. It's neat to watch these guys with their athleticism, these trick plays they pull. Now, could they go out and play the New York Yankees and beat them? No.
Yeah.
Can they beat the Chicago Cubs? No. Can they beat the Chicago White Sox? Probably not. The Colorado Rockies, I'm going 50-50. They might have a shot.
On the right night.
On the right night, they might do that. On the right night, Joe, Bill, Andy, and 6 other guys, we might have a chance. But I like it. I think it's fun. I think it introduces people to baseball. I think if people look at it, don't look at it and go, "Oh, I'm going to go to a major league game and expect these guys to do the same thing."
Yeah,
right.
But it's kind of fun. It's a great way to teach kids, show kids, like, yeah, this is kind of a fun way to baseball. Anything that gets eyeballs on the game,
Absolutely,
and young eyeballs on the game. I think that's
great point. Great point.
The last point on banana baseball is one of the most inspiring guys I've ever seen is the general manager or the owner, the guy that dresses in yellow. He's such an inspiring guy with just his business sense and how he goes about.
He'll be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, they are in the Hall of Fame already. They're in an exhibit on the second floor, tucked away back by the back by the broadcasters wing of the Hall of Fame. And it's there. It's not very big, but in the display case, there's a banana ball, there's a banana ball uniform. There's a copy. You can go in the Hall of Fame store. There's a copy of the book written by the president, owner of the team, innovator of the league, whose name escapes me at the time. But they've done really well. We were talking earlier. They sell out ballparks, big ballparks. They've
football
sold out football stadiums.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Now, does it last? I don't know.
Yeah.
There have been things over the years that go away after a year. So Beanie Babies come to mind.
Right.
Cabbage Patch Kids. But then there are things that have been around for generations. The Harlem
hip hop. Nobody thought hip hop would be around. That started in the mid 70s, and
this is
50
true.
years later.
Hey, look, disco had a short shelf life, and now we can't get rid of it.
I love this.
Yeah, I bet you are a great disco dancer, Andy.
I
can see out there cutting the rug.
I bet you're wrong. Although I did have those fake silk shirts when I was 14.
Nice.
Okay.
Fellas, I have a few more questions.
Go ahead, Joe.
Bill, are you going to hang in here?
These
are questions that I have to ask.
Okay.
I have the right person here for them. Put it that way. Greatest ever baseball movie, or the ones that you like. Yeah, I'll give you a couple.
Wow. Well, funny thing about baseball movies is that they're usually backdrops for other stories. You take The Natural, you take Field of Dreams, you take Bull Durham. People would say they're baseball movies, right? But they're really backdrops. Bull Durham's a story about, it's a lover's triangle. Bull Durham.
Right.
Field of Dreams is about mysticism. Well, actually, that's The Natural. Field of Dreams is about father-son relationships and connections. Baseball is simply a backdrop. If you want to go just with a straight baseball movie, wow. I don't know.
You make a great point. Even like my favorite is I know that I'm the one asking the questions.
Yeah.
But I still love Bad News Bears, the original Bad News Bear. But that was a story about Walter Matthau's character reconnecting and trying to coexist with Tatum O'Neal's character. They loved one another in a certain way, in a certain sense, right? I think they did.
Yeah,
but they couldn't get along because of what Mathau had done to Tatum's mother. And so, but to me, that's a baseball movie.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go just straight baseball movie, probably Pride of the Yankees.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But baseball movies tend to be backdrops for relationships in different ways. One of the great baseball movies, I think, was Bang the Drum Slowly. But it was about a relationship between a well-educated player and a country hick who was dying of Hodgkin's disease.
Right.
What's the movie about that features a girls' team? I can picture the movie. They have old-style uniforms. Yeah,
are you thinking of a League of Their Own?
A League of Their Own. I'm sorry.
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm
what
sorry.
Is that about?
That's what he's saying.
That's about the Women's All-American Professional Baseball League that started during World War II. In the mid-40s and had a shelf life of about a dozen years of women playing baseball. And it was actually pretty successful. It ran its course after a dozen years or so. But those ladies are honored in the Hall of Fame. Again, if you go to the Hall of Fame, they have a terrific exhibit about diamonds in the game, and it's about women in baseball. In fact, one of those women that they feature in Cooperstown was Eleanor Engel. who was the first woman to sign a professional baseball contract. She was from Shiremanstown.
Oh,
On the
really?
West Shore of
Wow.
Harrisburg.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In 1952, she signed a contract with the Harrisburg Senators,
Okay.
the
So,
original Harrisburg Senators.
Does anybody else?
What position did she play?
She was an infielder, but never had the opportunity to play because the president of the minor leagues, a guy named George Troutman, and the commissioner Ford Frick, they blew a couple circuits in their head, and they immediately voided the contract.
So, Andy,
Yes, sir.
I think the outfield assist in baseball is one of the greatest plays in all of sports. What do you think of the assist from it? You know, when you watch these old Dave Parker and Bo Jackson, and I mean, it's like draining a long putt. It kind of has to be perfect, But do you like that as a play?
I love that as a play. I mean, to this day, Harold Reynolds is still shocked that Bo Jackson threw him out from 320 feet away.
Still
And
shocked.
Dave Parker's throw in the 1979 All-Star game was just fantastic. And pretty much any time Roberto Clemente made a throw was fantastic. So you like to see it when it's done. When guys get thrown out by outfielders, it is so fundamentally sound defensively because you have to make the right throw. If it's a relay throw, now you're talking about two outstanding plays that have to be made. It's no surprise that third base coaches are really gung-ho about sending runners because it usually takes a perfect throw to get somebody at the plate. So to answer your question, I love the outfield assist.
It's freaking awesome.
It is.
How about just briefly, let's talk about the Harrisburg Senators as a product.
Okay.
Should people be going down there and watching baseball?
Absolutely.
City Island? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was.
And I say that because if you have a chance, if you succeed in Double A, okay, which is what Harrisburg is. Harrisburg's in the Double A Eastern League. Historically, if you succeed in Double A, you will play in the major leagues. It might be for 5 innings. It could be for 5 years. It could be for 20 years. You could wind up in the Hall of Fame like Vladimir Guerrero did.
Right.
My point is, when you go down on City Island, every time there's a home game, on either team, you're going to see people that are going to be in the major leagues. In fact, a fellow who was on Harrisburg's roster 2 days ago was called up to Washington today, made his major league debut, Andre Lara, a pitcher. Now, Washington was allowed to bring up an extra player because of the doubleheader. He may well be back in Harrisburg in 2 days. But where I'm going with this, Joe, is since 1987, when pro baseball returned to City Island, to 2025, so you're talking 38 years. Okay, Andre Lara is the 317th player to graduate from Harrisburg on his way to the major leagues.
Wow.
You can run the numbers. That's an awful lot of players on the average every year.
Right.
So the difference between Harrisburg and York and Lancaster, which are in the Independent Atlantic League, those guys aren't going to go into the major leagues.
Right.
You see top prospects every night, if not for Harrisburg, then for teams that come in, whether it's Erie, whether it's Reading. If you do a little Google search, you can find out who those top prospects are. So as a fan, you can come in and go, there's Aiden Miller from Reading. He's got a great chance to be in the Phillies mix in a couple of years. And if you look at the Altoona, Tremere Johnson, the second baseman, number one pick for them a few years ago, he's got a chance to be in the major leagues with the Pirates pretty soon.
And that's not to mention the Cracker Jacks and the hot dogs and the cold beers, right?
I don't see too many Cracker Jacks there. I do have some right here, though.
Oh, my goodness.
I had to do something when I was in the green room. I ran out of M&Ms.
I swear to goodness, folks, that was not a setup. That was
not a setup. I'm not a paid endorser of
Cracker Jacks good, though?
I love Cracker Jacks.
I love them, too.
But,
one point about these. Go ahead.
No,
go
Bill,
ahead,
it's your show. You're allowed to talk.
Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to say about players coming through Harrisburg. Yeah. I was at one of the games when Bryce Harper came in. Yeah. That was exciting because you knew that guy was going to be great. Just be able to see him right there on City Island.
Bryce Harper, the year before Steven Strasburg. These guys were number 1 overall picks in the draft.
Yeah.
And you knew when they got here, they were special to begin with. I can tell you when Vladimir Guerrero came here in 1996, he was a top prospect. He and Andrew Jones were the top prospects in baseball. You knew you were looking at something special.
Right.
So I covered the team for, like I said, I 93 years. You got me. It wasn't 94 years. Right. It was a long time. And you see so many great prospects who come through. And then you realize when you see guys get to this level and they don't make it, just how hard it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, if these guys can do the hard, can conquer the hard, they're going to be in the big leagues.
Right.
Okay,
Okay,
Joe?
so yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention, there has been one guy, I'm assuming it's a guy that's been watching almost the whole time. He's not there now, but it was like the number 1, like most of the show. So I would like to go meet this guy and shake his hands. He was really hanging in there with us.
See, Andy, when we find out we have a fan, like a fan, we're excited. We're excited about that.
I know
they're not fans of ours, though. They're fans of yours, obviously.
Yeah.
Andy.
No, I don't know about that. I check the analytics on my website every day.
Yeah.
It's an ego thing. How many people like me today? And some days are like, hey, Monday, people like me. Tuesday, oh boy, people don't like me.
What we found is most of the viewership that we get here, and sometimes there is quite a bit, at least for us, it can kind of dribble in.
Sure. Yeah.
Over the next few days or the next couple of weeks. I think the last thing I wanted to do, Bill, do you have anything else?
No, I'm done.
You are what's considered a freelance writer now, Andy.
Yeah. I write for myself actually with my website, but yes.
What can you tell us? You have multiple books, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your books?
Sure. I wrote a book once I left the newspaper business. At the end of 2008, basically my wife and I switched jobs. She was kind of a stay-home mom who worked part-time, and then went back working full-time as a physical therapist. And at that point, our daughter was 4 years old. So she was interesting at that point. Now she was always interesting, but I could basically, I wound up becoming for quite a few years a combination of Mrs. Doubtfire and Mr. Mom. And somehow the kid turned out okay, thanks to Mom. So after a couple of years, I decided I wrote my first book. I think my wife was tired of me telling all these stories, and she said to me one day, why don't you put this all in a book? So
why don't you just write a book?
Just write a book. Why don't you inflict other people with these tales? Because I've heard them all 5 times. So I did that. And I said, okay, it's very cathartic. I wrote the book. It was supposed to be just a one and done. And I promised my wife, because writing a book is totally different than writing a newspaper story, writing a magazine story, writing for the wire services. They're all different disciplines, and they all have their own headaches that go with it, and pluses and minuses. But I was only going to write one book, and my first book came out in 2012. And right when it came out, within the first couple of weeks, I never tell short stories. I don't know if you noticed.
That's okay. That's all right.
Within the first couple of weeks, I had 4 people that I knew didn't know each other independently come up to me and said, I read your book. I really liked it. When's the next one coming out? Well, all you have to do is say that to a writer, and it goes right into our egos. Right? Like, well, I got to write another book now. There's
that guy that bought that book that I sold, that one book.
There you go. I got 4 more sales coming.
Right.
So I wrote another book, which was the first book was called One Patch of Grass. And the second book was a follow-up to that called Clippings, and it was clippings, all the other cool stuff that didn't fit into the first book. Mm-hmm. The first book is really kind of an informal history of baseball in Harrisburg. Pro baseball in Harrisburg started in 1890 on the island. And that was right up through Steven Strasburg in 2011. And then the second book was literally photos, quotes, anecdotes that just didn't make it into the first book. And so I did that, and I'm done with that. I told my wife I would finally work on her honeydew list from the first book, which at that point had grown from 5 pages 10 pages, double-sided, single wide.
Well,
And then,
I'd like. Go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead. Then after the 2016 season, one of the blog writers for the Senators and their Mick Reinhardt and their radio announcer Terry Byram, we talked about putting together a record book, and they volunteered me to do it. So I did that, and I promised that would be the last one. And then the next year, I thought, it's coming up on the 25th anniversary of the 1993 Senators, who were one of the greatest teams in the history of minor league baseball.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest. I thought, well, I got to write about that team. So I had negotiations with my wife and my daughter if I would be allowed to write it. And they said yes. And they went into the other room.
Do you have to hire an attorney for that or anything like that?
No, they came back with terms. They came back with terms. There was a new dishwasher involved and a new refrigerator involved. And so I got to write the book. And then I was told if I ever read another book after that, I would have to be living in the barn out back of our house. So I wrote 4 books. Excuse me. If people are interested in that, or just interested in my website, it's baseballscribe.com. All one word, baseball and scribe, SCRIBE.com, baseballscribe.com. I tell people I have 3 or 4 posts every day on baseball. They can read excerpts from my book. If nothing else, at the bottom of the website, there are about 100 photos or so of baseball on City Island going back to the late 1890s, early 1900s, right up through today. So that's how I got started with 4 books. I think I've killed a lot of trees. I feel bad about that. But I encourage people, if they really want to get just a small fix of baseball every day, you can find me on Facebook under Harrisburg Baseball or by my name, or on my website, baseballscribe.com.
Well, as with your book clippings,
yes,
there were some things that we didn't get to, at least I didn't get to. So I'd love to have you back sometime as maybe not take up the whole time like this, but at least enough time. I only asked 2/3 of my questions, Andy. Okay.
Well, I'll be happy to answer the other third anytime you want.
Why don't we do that, Bill? Will you authorize that to bring Andrew Linker back on some other time to
let me check with my general manager.
Okay.
He says thumbs up, so we're good.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, more raps, more M&Ms, and now that I figure out how to sign on, I didn't have the technical problems that Chris had.
We will do it again, and I mean
anytime you want, Joe.
I got some additional great questions to ask you, and of course I'm on 7th heaven here, cloud 9, talking about baseball with the baseball guy like yourself. The Phillies are leading the Padres 5-1, top of the 8th. Padres have runner on 1st and 2nd with 2 outs.
Hey, I was born and bred in Philadelphia. I'm still scarred from 1964. So 5-1 with that bullpen, it's not safe.
No, Gene Mock, Gene Mock.
So
let's thank our sponsors one more time. And they are Robert H. Hoke, American Legion Post 272, Rickabaz Electric, Team PA, AAU Basketball, and Be a Hero, Hire a Hero. And once again, we had Chris James on. We lost him because the audio wasn't good. He and I have corresponded since then, just in the last half hour or so, by text, and he's going to come back on. We got to have him back.
You know what, Joe? We had that difficulty, but we've had Andy here. We said at the beginning of the show that we're the #1 podcast in Lower Paxton Township, and now, Andy, you've been involved in the longest show of our history. So you have the longevity here as far as a show. You're #1, man.
Well, I hope I didn't take you from #1 to like #4.
No.
You go in our wall of fame because you're the longest show.
We don't know if we're going to induct you yet, but we're going to at least commemorate you with something in our wall of fame.
We're going to have we're going to have the Andy Linker display in our Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
Well, thank you very much. And I have to tell you, somewhere's in the house right now, outside of my office, is my wife, who is absolutely thrilled that you had me on here, because then she could actually enjoy the time.
Well, tell her we said anytime, Mrs.
Okay, I'll
Linker,
do that.
anytime.
Well,
Thank you,
Thank you.
I had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me
Thank
on.
you.
That was a
Yeah.
blast. We really appreciate it, folks. Andrew Linker, journalist, writer, baseball historian, and fun dude, man. You're a lot of fun.
Thanks.
That was
I
a
appreciate
blast.
that, Joe. Thank
So
you.
for
Thank
Bill
you,
Bostic and Andy Linker, our host, I'm Joe Gilloway. Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.